The first time I heard Joan Jett was with the band The Runaways. Back in 1979, I picked up the Runaways' first album, and my mind was blown. I listened to that record so freaking much, man. I loved the Runaways, and I still do. And I consider their first album to be a real classic. I really do. A lot of people say simplistic or basic, but what is rock and roll but simplistic and basic? Unless you start getting guys like Yngwie and, people doing all the technical stuff on their guitars, or maybe the band Rush. But let's face it, bands like AC/DC, The Runaways, basic rock and roll, Chuck Berry, The Ramones, that's the good stuff, man. The rest of it's good too. But I'm saying, The Runaways' first album is dynamite. The next time I heard about Joan Jett was one day listening to the radio as a teenager, and I heard I Love Rock and Roll come on the radio, and I'm like sitting up straight, like, what's this? This is awesome, and there's a chick singing. This is great. And then, of course, once I saw what Joan Jett looked like, it was like knocking the freaking ball out of the proverbial park. I mean, who, male or female, wasn't attracted to Joan Jett? Say I. I hear crickets. Anyway, Joan Jett played Peoria, and I was bound and determined to meet her. That's right, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, Peoria, Illinois, for the Grand National Weekend, which is the races in central Illinois. And there's like 10,000 people that come outside for this huge outdoor bash. And every year they have a great rock star. And this year, August 17th, 2007, it was Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. And man, oh man, it was right down by the Peoria, Illinois riverfront. It was completely packed, and I had to call my good buddy Jim Kiefer from the band Exit for a favor. That's right, man. I said, look, you guys are opening up for Joan Jett? He's like, yep. And I'm like, any way to get your good buddy on the Backstage guest list? And he's like, well, I don't know if I can do that or not. I'm like, oh, man, you have to. I've got to meet Joan Jett. You don't get it, man. Well, I was doing local radio at the time. And not really local, yeah, I guess local, central Illinois. And some folks knew who I was from my bands, which was a good or a bad thing. Some people knew me from the radio, and some people didn't know it was the same person. But that'll come into play in a few minutes. I found out Joan was coming. Jim Kiefer called me from the band Exit, and he says to me, I got you a backstage pass to meet Joan Jett, hopefully. Hopefully it'll help. I'm like, yes! So we head down to the riverfront, and I'm just extremely excited, and I'm hell-bent. I'm going to meet Joan Jett. And then I find out that Joan Jett's doing a meet and greet with one of the guys that I had formerly worked with at Rock 106. I believe it was Joey D, actually. Joey, if you're listening, shout out, bro. Anyway, I heard she was doing a meet and greet. I got the pass, so I get backstage. There's Tommy Price, the legendary drummer from, Scandal and Billy Idol, and now, of course, with Joan Jett, he was with her for many years. Tommy Price, legend. I'm backstage. I'm kind of talking to Tommy, and he's super cool looking. He looks punk rock as all get out. The band's getting ready to go on. Next thing you know, here comes Joan Jett. And she's up on stage and getting ready to do the show. And I'm like, how can I get backstage? How can I get backstage? Turns out the pass that I had would not get me back to where she was at, only to the backstage area, but not back behind that area where Joan's trailer was at and where the tent was at, where they were doing the meet and greet with Joan Jett. And I kept thinking, I'm on the radio. I'm a lifetime fan. And there's all these people in a tent meeting Joan Jett, and why in the hell am I out in the audience? Well, I finally got backstage, thanks again to Jim Kiefer, and the next thing you know, something weird happened. Joan Jett was being introduced. She came walking up to the stage, got on the stage, and the sound wasn't right. She wasn't very happy. Joni was a little bit pissed, and guess what she did? She spit, and she trucked right back off the stage, walked down the back stairs, and walked across the field, straight to her dressing room. But what happened before that is epic. Here's what happened. I had the pass, but it wouldn't get me to where she was at. So at some point, before Joni comes to that stage, I climb the fence. I start acting like I'm official, not trying to stick out or acting like I'm doing something wrong. I'm just this rock and roll guy that maybe is part of the crew. Maybe I'm part of the band. How do they know? Well, One of the security guys did know, and he didn't like me. I didn't tell him who I was. He just walked up to me and said, I don't care who you are. You're not staying. You don't have a pass. Get out. And I was like, I'm helping with this meet and greet for the radio station. And he's like, what? Where's your pass? I'm like, I'm telling you, man. And I was bull crapping my way through this because I knew this guy was going to throw me out, but he wasn't going to win. Well, I ended up getting away from this guy somehow, and I walked further and further, closer and closer to Joan's trailer, and I saw the tent, and my buddy said, Joan's right in there doing the meet and greet. I'm like, you've got to be kidding. So I'm like, please let her come out within the next 5 or 10 minutes, or I'm not going to be able to stay here. Well, I kind of was stalking outside the tent. I could hear Joan inside. Next thing you know, Joan goes out of the tent and goes walking over to her trailer. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's my only chance. And here comes security boy. This big flannel shirt wearing, overstuffed, short-haired, probably cigar smoking looking, just some guy. He hated me because I was who I was and whatever. Screw that guy. Anyway, I took my chance and I said, hey, Joan, I drove 8 hours to meet you. And you know what Joan Jett did? She stopped dead in her tracks and she looks at me and she goes, like, nodded her freaking head at me to come here. I'm like, yes. She's decked out from head to toe in leather. She's got her eyeliner on. She is Joan freaking Jett, and I'm freaking the F out. Well, Joni's sitting there, and I go, hey, man, first of all, I'm a lifetime fan, and I want to thank you for producing the Germs first album, man. I love the Germs. And she's like, you're a Germs fan? Yeah. And she knew right away that I was a real fan and not just some kook, because I knew some history that was, pretty deep. Anyone know that she produced the first Germs record? Well, now you do. Anyway, as we're standing there, she sees me walking towards her, and she puts out her hand and I put out my hand and we take a picture together shaking, which is out there on the internet somewhere. I've seen it. I've posted it. It's an epic picture because me and Joan are both in leather and we're shaking hands, and I'm obviously in a very high state of happiness, and Joan was smiling. And the next thing you know, I said, some more small talk. And then she's like, okay, man, we'll enjoy the show. And I said, Joan, before you go, can I get a photo with you? My photographer's here with me. And she goes, cool. Where's your photographer? And I'm like, and I look around and I'm like totally not only did I BS her about driving 8 hours, even though it worked, but I had to BS her about the photographer and I had none. So I look around and I see Veronica, the ex-secretary for Rock 106, who used to work at the front desk and who was a good friend of mine. And she later married the keyboard player from the band Exit, George Herbst. Shout out to George and Veronica, some good people, man, and total rockers. Anyway, Veronica, I see her and I go, hey, Veronica, you got your camera to get that photo? And she totally plays along. Veronica comes walking up as if she's actually my photographer. Me and Joan put our arms, kind of around each other, and I got this epic photo, which, man, I don't have it handy. All my physical photos are gone, but it's on the net. It's out there, and it's a great, great photo that I'm quite proud of. Well, at this point, I went ahead and hightailed it back out into the audience. It had taken me a good half an hour just to even manipulate what I did. I was super high on endorphins. My adrenalines were pumping. I had just met Joan Jett, and not only was she super cool to me, but she pretty much, that big security guard that was trying to kick me out, when he saw me and yelling at Joan, he physically tried to remove me. And I was like this close to physically kicking his ass, or at least trying. But I would definitely not have let him take me out without a fight. That doesn't happen, man, because the bigger they are, the harder they freaking fall. Now, at this age, would I? Hell yes. Anyway, Joan Jett pretty much saved me from the goon. She lived up to my reputation as a cool person and a real rocker. I go out to the crowd. Joni walks up to the stage. This is when she realizes the sound is bad. She spits on the stage and walks back to that trailer. And I'm just like, yes, man, Joan Jett, the real deal. She just walked off stage and pretty much said, F you guys, call me, come knock on my trailer door when the sound is ready, man. Wow, it was an epic, epic day. I got to tell you what, man. And is there anything that I have forgotten? I don't believe I did. But I will tell you this, I got the set list from the show that night. So once I got back into the audience, I was able to get over my I need to meet Joan Jett thing because I had already met her. And man, was that a killer show. It was really good, man. Started off with Bad Reputation. And then, of course, right into the Runaways Cherry Bomb, which was magnificent. And everyone was singing along, let me tell you. Then she went into Light of Day. Do you remember the movie that she did back in the day with Michael J. Fox called The Light of Day? Well, that was the song from that movie. Then into the Gary Glitter classic, Do You Want to Touch Me? Wow, Joan Jett should own that song because she's kind of made it hers after all these years. And by the way, I think every time I've ever seen Joan Jett, and I've seen her in different states as far as Illinois to California, Oregon, everywhere, she always opens her show with Gary Glitter pumping out on her PA system. Joan Jett is not a politically correct person. She doesn't care what you think about her liking Gary Glitter. She just likes good rock and roll, and so do I. I'm a big fan of his music, but not the person himself, I gotta tell you. If you don't know why, you can do a deep dive on that, or a light dive. It takes no time to find out why Gary Glitter's not to be really admired, but his music kills. Then she went into Change the World, and then into one of her classics, Androgynous. Then she did 5. She broke into Love is Pain and went right into the song called Naked. That's when she did the theme song from the Mary Tyler Moore Show. That's right. She's recorded it and she plays it live, and it's always a fun, lighthearted moment during any Joan Jett concert. Love is All Around is the title. And then she went into Riddles. She went into Fetish, which is a great song, by the way. Joan's always kind of walked that tight line between keeping it kind of bubblegum pop rock and roll and a little bit of risque. Actually, a lot of risque, really. A lot of her songs are very risque. So what am I saying, man? She's a badass. And Joan Jett, if you're seeing this, come on, man. Shoot me an email and come on my radio show for 5 minutes. Then she went into I Love Rock and Roll. The whole place went nuts because, of course, you know, it's one of her biggest songs, and she gave it to us hard and rock and roll as best she could. Right into the Tommy James classic Crimson and Clover, which is another excellent song by Joan Jett. Next to Little Drummer Boy. I know it's a Christmas tune, but Little Drummer Boy by Joan Jett rules. It really does. Then she went into I Hate Myself for Loving You, one of the best rock and roll songs ever made. I hate myself for loving you. I just can't believe it. What a great song. Joan Jett is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and she deserves to be. AC/DC by the band Sweet was up next, and that was awesome. Who doesn't love Sweet, right? Real Wild Child, a song that Iggy Pop made kind of famous. She reinvented that one, even though it was actually a song by somebody else. Maybe if you know the answer, leave it in the description area, or in the comments, I'm sorry. Whew. And last song of the night was another cover, and it was another song that she has recorded, and she does it at a lot of her shows, and it was Everyday People by Sly and the Family Stone. Let me tell you what, man, it was an incredibly awesome show. 18 songs. I got to meet the woman, and after all those maybe half dozen shows I've seen of hers, it was probably one of my very favorites. Now, the first time I saw Joan was at the fair in Illinois, right around 1987-88, and that was awesome. But I did not get to meet her that day, although lots of my friends did. I do have another Joan Jett tale for you guys that's really, really good, and Sister Tracy will be joining me when I do that tale. It's about the second time I met Joan Jett, and it was way more intimate, and I got to spend quite a bit of time with her one-on-one. Well, me and her and Tracy. Listen, if you like this story, and you like this channel, and if you like rock and roll, could you do me a favor, man? Could you like this video? Would you subscribe to my channel? Maybe leave a little comment, good, bad, or ugly. And if you could share this, that would be off the wall cool, man. So just remember, I will be back very soon with another tale, and I think I'm going to tell you a little story about maybe meeting Wendy O. Williams on LSD backstage at a Plasmatics concert. We'll figure it out. Thanks for checking out Bloody F Mess Official. Please subscribe to the channel, and I'll be back soon, my friends. Stay real.